Welcome to today's Explainer. So we recently went through this massive, honestly kind of chaotic, 2-hour conversation with billionaire investor Kevin O'Leary, and we've distilled the whole shebang into a highly actionable, battle-tested blueprint. If you've ever wanted a dynamic masterclass on life, wealth, and business frameworks, well, you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to cut straight through all the noise today and bring you directly to the insights that actually matter.
Here's the playbook we're running through today. We're hitting the entrepreneurial DNA, the rules of wealth, money and marriage, the AI queen bee, and finally, the pursuit of happiness. Let's dive right in.
All right, Section 1, the entrepreneurial DNA. Let's talk about being wired for success.
To really grasp the harsh reality of the entrepreneurial mindset, you kind of have to look back at a defining moment. On his very first day working at an ice cream shop, a young Kevin O'Leary was told to get down on his hands and knees and scrape chewing gum off the floor. Well, he flat out refused, and he was fired on the spot. It was this blunt, totally defining realization that, honestly, not everyone is wired for the massive risk and freedom of entrepreneurship. It's the whole those who own the store versus those who scrape the floor mentality. The source actually argues that only about a third of people are truly built for that chaotic life, while the rest, they're much better suited to being highly successful employees. You really have to figure out which one you are.
Now, for that top 1/3 who actually are entrepreneurs, leadership requires a totally different gear. Just look at this completely unapologetic stance from Steve Jobs back in the early 90s when O'Leary was building educational software for him. Jobs had this almost dictatorial focus. It perfectly illustrates that top-tier leaders, they don't get bogged down by consensus. They aren't waiting on endless market research. They execute relentlessly on their own vision and basically force the market to follow them.
So how do great leaders actually manage to execute that vision day in and day out? It comes down to a secret weapon, which is the signal-to-noise ratio. Jobs literally dedicated 80% of his waking hours, 80% of an 18-hour day, exclusively to his signal. These are the top 3 to 5 critical, self-defined tasks that absolutely must get done today. Everything else, that is just noise. If you want to be a successful leader, you have to relentlessly protect your signal and just ignore the noise. But here's a totally fascinating twist on startup execution that's hidden in decades of real-world portfolio data. When you compare startup CEO success rates, companies run by men tend to set these super aggressive 30% growth targets, right? And they hit them about 65% of the time. But companies run by women, they set more grounded 15 to 16% targets, and get this, they hit them a staggering 90+% of the time. Why? Because they set achievable targets, team attrition stays super low, and this is crucial, they listen far more than they talk.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, the rules of wealth. It's all about the math of keeping your money. We're shifting gears from the mindset of making money to the highly disciplined math of actually keeping it. The foundational secret here comes from a middle-class mother named Georgette. This was actually O'Leary's mother, and she used this exact, totally boring yet incredibly effective diversification math for 55 years to secretly build an extraordinary fortune. Her rules were insanely strict. Never, ever put more than 5% of your portfolio into any one stock or bond, and never let any single sector exceed 20% of your total investments. By sticking to this emotionless math with cash, dividends, stocks, and bonds, she generated absolutely massive returns.
Now, when it comes to keeping that wealth intact, we definitely have to talk about real estate. There is a blunt, basically unbreakable rule, 1/3. You should never let your mortgage and the cost of maintaining your house exceed 1/3 of your income. On top of that, the source advises that if you're single and your primary goal is just to grow wealth, you might want to avoid buying a house entirely. Ride the market first, keep your capital diversified, and really only buy a house when you're actually starting a family.
So what do you do with your money if you aren't pouring it into a massive mortgage? Well, there's a beautifully simple 3-step formula. Step 1, start at age 25 and save just 15% of an average $70,000 salary. Step 2, invest it passively in an S&P 500 ETF. Seriously, don't try to pick individual stocks. Just set it and forget it. Step 3, you'll reach over $1.5 million by age 65. It practically guarantees a young professional is going to retire as a millionaire strictly through emotional discipline and the magic of time.
Which brings us to Section 3, money and marriage. Honestly, this is the biggest risk of all.
Because here's the thing, all of that disciplined saving, it can vanish in an instant. Let me pose a question directly to you. What do you think is the single biggest threat to your wealth? You might be guessing a massive market crash, or maybe terrible investments, or a failed startup, but the data tells a completely different story. The real answer? Divorce and financial stress. A divorce will wipe out up to 2/3 of your wealth. Just think about it. Between lawyers, splitting assets, and taxes, it's brutal.
And here's a really hard truth sourced from some of the top divorce lawyers across North America. 90% of marriages don't actually fail because of infidelity. They fail because of unaligned spending habits and the crushing weight of financial stress. At its core, marriage really is a financial partnership. To protect yourself, you need to recognize what we're calling the 5 love languages of money. You've got the mooch, you've got the spenderholic who buys stuff just to look successful, the loafer who has absolutely zero ambition, the thief, and finally, the meanie. Now, the meanie is actually the balanced spender who fiercely lives within their means. The urgent takeaway here, you need to identify these red flags by the 3rd date. Have those tough conversations about long-term financial goals, and ultimately, you want to marry the meanie.
All right, Section 4, the AI Queen Bee. Taking a look at the macro future.
So, with our personal finances secured, let's zoom out for a second to the staggering disruption of artificial intelligence. We're talking about a technological shift described as being even bigger than the internet itself. To understand the geopolitics of AI, let's borrow an analogy originally coined by Steve Jobs. In this ecosystem, you have the queen bee, which is the core hardware processing chip, right? Then you have the honeybees, the millions of global coders who are writing software and building AI models specifically around that chip. To win the economic and military future, a nation has to maintain total control of the queen bee and attract all those developers to build the hive.
Finally, Section 5, the pursuit of happiness. Let's talk about personal fulfillment.
Let's bring this explainer back down to the human level for a minute. Because all the wealth, all that discipline, and all the technology in the world means very little without personal fulfillment and a sense of purpose. The real key here is forging your struggles into strengths. Did you know early childhood traumas, like severe dyslexia, can actually be transformed into a massive entrepreneurial superpower? It forces you to look at the world differently and build incredibly unique problem-solving skills. And as you build your career, the absolute necessity for long-term survival is brand authenticity. Maintaining pure, transparent authenticity is literally the only way to protect your personal brand and keep your community's trust. The second you sell out for a quick check, you lose.
Which leads us perfectly to this final philosophical takeaway. Happiness is consistently achieving your goals. It is not a destination, it's a journey. You know, happiness is never just a fixed dollar amount sitting in a bank account somewhere. It's the ongoing daily process of executing your vision, cutting out all that noise we talked about, and doing exactly what you set out to do every single day.
I want to wrap up our explainer today by leaving you with this really provocative question. Are you truly driven towards your own goals, or are you just being dragged through the noise? It's a real challenge for you to completely rethink your daily routine. Cut out the distractions, fiercely protect your signal, and take control of your financial and personal destiny. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this blueprint helps you go out and build exactly what you want.